So just to introduce the panel, we've got myself, COO at Trust. I've got 23 years of experience in the channel with managed services. Josh Potts, our operations director, who's built the Trust managed service from day one at Trust, and its various evolutions and scales since then. And Robin Johnston, MSP Lead from Cisco, to bring to bear our key vendor from a managed service perspective. So with the agenda, we'd like to cover the basic what in terms of the environment from Cisco's perspective, the why from my experience in terms of being a bit newer to Trust relative to other managed services that I've worked at, and how that fits into the why of managed services, and then Josh to really crystallise that and bring the how Trust do things to bear at the end. I'll have a quick summary and then go through any of the questions that have come up in the Q&A through the process if they haven't been answered in the chat, or equally in order to take any new ones on. So just before we start off, just going to test the Teams technology a little bit. You should have a poly icon at the top of your screen. Just wanted to do a quick poll, if we may. If you don't mind participating, just to check of the participants who are existing Cisco users and any of those that are already consuming a managed service. So if you're okay, just to give that a go. Okay. We'll let you do that in due course if you want to participate. Failing with that, I'll like to introduce just who we are before we start. So clearly, Trust are a managed service provider. We've got the established Teams process and certification to go with that, and more ultimately the experience that goes with it. We provide managed service solutions, not just managed services. So typically we work with our clients to design, deliver and operate those solutions and get into the iterative process of working with clients on that basis. And then we're Cirencester based. We've got a 24/7 managed service facility and a 7-day field service. And hopefully our Cisco accreditations speak for themselves. So as I said in the agenda at this stage, if I could introduce Robin from Cisco to go through the managed service transition and strategies, and paste a little bit of a view on that marketplace from Cisco's perspective. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris, and good morning, everybody. Delighted to be able to spend 15 minutes with you just outlining what managed services mean to Cisco and why Cisco have invested heavily in a managed service operation across the world, actually. And more specifically, what we're seeing in the marketplace and what we are enabling partners, trusted partners like Trust, to be able to deliver on the back of our technology and our platforms. So we can go to the next slide, please. So it will be no big surprise to you that Cisco does a significant amount of research in the marketplace, and last one we conducted was last year in 2022. And this is kind of what came out of the research that was delivered. The customer trends, and some of these may be relevant to you. This may actually hit a spot with you. Digital transformation is a continuing process, and actually the feedback and the research showed that it means different things to different people, but the key motion around digital transformation is it can either be very complex or very simple, depending on how your back-end systems, or from the device all the way to the cloud, whether you're cloud first or whether you're cloud where appropriate, whether you have an entire hybrid approach to working now that we've come back into a more of a agile and flexible working environment. But that digital transformation requires significant planning and requires significant support from trusted advisors. The marketplace itself are trying to decentralize the IT buying motions, which essentially is bringing together a significant multi-vendor approach to the market, where our customers and certainly the market is looking for single points of contact, single points of delivery around a service level agreement, and providing that ability to be able to consume IT in a more OPEX based model. Now, there are some parts of certainly UK PLC that are still going through that transition, how they deal with operating costs and capital costs, but actually the flexibility and the agility around a managed service in the IT landscape allows you to be able to consume how best suits your particular environment. Now, the implications of all that complexity is a major word that we use around Cisco in the last 12 to 18 months, and simplicity being the converse of that. But the complex nature of any IT landscape and the desire to have a single point of contact to be able to manage all the way from the cloud to that end device with this relevant jump off points is a significant implication around a managed service. And then to be able to streamline that complexity and deliver against outcomes. So rather than having technology as a service, it's more delivering against business outcomes, which actually drives business value. And there's a number of the key factors around that particular element, which I'll take you through in a moment. For Cisco, our overall global strategy is to move towards a software recurring revenue organization. So we have a significant amount of hardware technology. We've got licensing clearly in the enterprise networking, security, and data center space. But we also have a significant amount of software full stack observability, for example, that enables managed service partners like Trust to be able to deliver a service back against a service level agreement, service level timelines. But the key value message around all of that is actually what business outcomes are we trying to solve? So rather than just technology for technology's sake, what business outcomes are we actually trying to solve on the back of providing that service from a trusted advisor? And this true partnership approach that Cisco is taking, and the team that I lead within Cisco in the UK, is really built around how we enable partners like Trust to be able to drive significant value back to our joint customers around those business outcomes. And I know that Chris and Josh will take you through a bit more detail about that particular offering. Next slide, please. So what does that actually mean? How do you transition to a managed service? So traditionally, there may be multi-vendor capability, there may be siloed technology capability, but inside our particular technology stack, there are a number of areas by which you can start building out a managed service. And a lot of our partners, and particularly our customers, are taking a move step by step through that digital transformation policy, which really comes down to a number of reasons around budget, around skills in-house, around the support structure that's required, around visibility directly into that end user experience. And it's really around that end user experience that the lines of business are trying to deliver against. And this is perfect for a managed service, because actually when you start thinking about security, when you start thinking about enterprise networking, secure access, particularly now in this hybrid work scenario, you're starting to build out a capability and relying on a trusted advisor to provide that capability back to you, to actually free lines of business and IT departments and CTOs up to deliver far more value as we drive through that whole service chain. Now, this particular slide will give you a view of the number of opportunities, but actually for me, what I see in the marketplace and with our customers right now is they're not actually producing specific entry points. They're starting at the infrastructure, they're starting at security, and then once you've got that core platform, it's layering on those applications to provide that application health and that end user experience at the other side. That business outcome for a managed service actually provides value back when providing that growth support for an organization, particularly as we head through into the world of AI, the world of chat, GPT, the world of automation. And that automation element needs to have that infrastructure in place in order to drive appropriately. So really, from making that transition to a managed service for us, and when we support our partners in this, is really around what business outcomes we're trying to solve here. And there's a number of different, depending on which particular market you operate in, whether it be retail, manufacturing, public sector, it's really built around trying to drive value back to that end user and value back to that organization as a whole. Now, Cisco create significant market-leading technology stacks, but building on that agnostic managed services, bearing in mind that organizations that if we accept the fact that organizations are trying to drive down the number of vendors that are providing services back to the organization, that multi-vendor agnostic services that are currently exist helps achieve that particular goal, probably in a hybrid approach. Inside Cisco, we run this design, build, run, observe, and manage capability. And actually that design and build and that run element could be considered the technology, but the observe and manage and providing that back as a service is really where the managed services comes into its own. Next slide, please. If you click straight through, actually it brings it all up. So we have 5 key pillars. Now, these are not all the solutions we have, but these are 5 key pillars that we operate around a true managed service. Collaboration, hybrid cloud and data center, observability, network, and security. But what actually we're seeing the market move towards is starting with security and working back. So you can't, certainly from a best practice position, delivering an SD-WAN, for example, in a more agile and flexible and consumptive model that we described, is great. But unless you have the necessary security, secure service edge, securing those devices, particularly in a hybrid work scenario, whether it be VPN connectivity, whether it be zero trust, drives then that observability across the board. We encourage customers to think more laterally and says, okay, let's get a core base around our managed service. Is it infrastructure and security? And then start loading on those observability capability, those observability software. And that is where partners like Trust come into their own. That's where they can provide a significant value statement back into the business to be able to provide almost, and we're working towards that with the AI ops and with the automation process, drive that key function back into an organization that really provides that before it happens scenario. So algorithms learning from past attacks, learning from past failures in the network drives that probability and that automation that will allow for problems to be solved before they actually happen. The team at Cisco are here and do support partners in being able to provide the managed services, and we build out those service descriptions in order to provide specific value statements back into the marketplace, which is what we've done with Trust. So I think in summary then for us, managed service is a key part of our strategy going forward in the next 3 to 5 years. It is the only area within Cisco at the moment that has the major focus, particularly as we move towards this global strategy around a software organization, software first organization, and we have many different routes to market. But I guess the question for you by joining this webinar is which elements of your service, which elements of your IT stack can be managed and then supported by Trust to be able to provide that transition into that more flexible, agile, and the ability to grow quickly and effectively at that point of contact. So that just gives you a overview of Cisco. I'm going to hand back across now. I think it's to Chris. I think I'm handing across to.
Thanks for that, Robin. Perfect pre-seed into what I'm going to talk around, which is what's the actual important of that service model from a Trust perspective. So that's based on the current industry views and trends that we see from the likes of Cisco, our partners like Comstore, but not least, I guess, 23 years of experience from my perspective of positioning, designing and providing managed service or as a service to multi-service environments. So to try and surface the key elements of that in the time that we've got, we'll first look at what the trends in the marketplace are really. So as Robin's alluded to, ultimately there's more technology, more complex environments, a broader service stack. And then that goes with that ultimately, as if you're going to try and look after that yourself, you need the broader set of skills to support it and operate it. Showing my age here, but there's a move from Cisco when I started early on, and I was on the client side working for banks, etc. It was worrying about the private network and the internet. It was that pillar, but we're moving from that technology now, and it's all about cloud and networking from a hybrid, a distributed, or a community perspective, and working out how all the moving parts of the applications and the workloads sit in terms of the access and the connectivity that goes between them in that multi-service environment. So ultimately, that goes back to, back in the day, as I was saying at the start, there were probably three or four pillars. It was switching, routing, firewall, and wireless. Whereas Robin's slide had got 22 items of the key service pillars that we're confronted to today with one vendor. If you then times that across all of you vendors, that becomes quite a daunting prospect, particularly in terms of the interfaces between those technology components and how they work. So ultimately, there's a requirement there to get a managed service provider who've got that service breadth and that can provide the end-to-end ownership across that stack. So this complexity means there's actually an increased cost and effort to keep the lights on, and that's ultimately at odds with the refresh cycles, digital transformation that the organisation or the IT directors got, that are ultimately in contention and competing for budget between the two boxes here. So what Trust are aiming to do is to actually keep pace with the technology solutions and provide a managed service to go with them, and that's about being proactive and evolving with our partners and actually contributing to their business requirements and the solutions, and then evolving the service that we offer them. That's how we've got the clients that have been with us and grown with us over time and stayed with us over time, which is hopefully a testament to the service that we provide. So I guess there's a couple of options here. Have you got the scale for a DIY approach? Smaller organisations. Have you got enough people that can look after the support aspects without being diluted down while they're trying to do that from the day job, which is delivering projects to support the business? And that's not just in terms of heads. That's across each technology, each vendor that you use, where you've got specific specialists, and most larger organizations today, or even smaller ones, have a broad range of those types of technology. So there's people wearing all the technology hats, as well as having to wear a service delivery and operational management, as well as delivering projects at the same time. So by going with a trusted partner to look after the managed service, it allows the organisation to focus on delivering, using IT to add advantage to the organisation. So there's some questions that go with that, really, in terms of what's the cost of going it alone. As Robin alluded to, there's much more of an OPEX model and requirement in the organisation. Most vendors are moving towards OPEX, and it's something that we're seeing demand for from our clients, where they want to know what the fixed cost of managing an estate is on a monthly basis, with all the hardware, break fix, whatever level of service and SLA they want wrapped into that, with the appropriate software licensing, and often actually looking at the cost of the hardware as an OPEX model, and the software to go with it, with things like Cisco enterprise agreements that brings benefits then of licensing that comes with the managed service, and Trust would take care of all of that. So ultimately, there's an element there in terms of what the outcome is. Is it a cost reduction, or ideally, you're looking for a managed service partner, not a provider? So somebody who'll be consultative, become part of the client's innovation and transformation process. But obviously, the experience is that's quite a leap of faith unless you move from one organisation to the other and somebody who's fit for purpose. The reality with a lot of our clients is that they actually start with a smaller pilot that lends itself to being looked at and build up, a proof of concept and get to work with us on a specific project that then gets accepted into service and moves to a managed service that proves that we deliver what we're talking about here. So here we can see, I guess, the key points really in theory for very straightforward. He says tongue in cheek is offload the complexity, consolidate your vendors to gain a solution and service value. In reality, Trust provides savings and value with our cost-effective end-to-end managed services. So we might use the network as an enabler and an element to start off those services. Our heritage has been delivering network managed services to clients for many years, but through that we end up then getting involved in what the endpoints. Is it a handheld terminal? Is it a screen displaying media content? Is it Internet of Things in terms of building management control systems? And where we actually find ourselves adding value then is the end-to-end service there. So we might get involved in mobile device management, or we might get involved in providing the cloud that delivers the media to the screens for advertising, or securing an Internet of Things environment over the network that we manage. So it's all about providing that and the wrapping that goes with it to give the customers the peace of mind that we're not only keeping the lights on in the organisation, but working out how to do that better as they evolve, because it's rarely a static situation. So these are sort of industry stats around what you need to know about managed services. I guess in addition to being a Cisco Premier provider, Trust normally support the transformation with those key partners where we're providing a material managed service, and that usually comes about by part of the managed service being part of our solution. So we typically get involved with putting the solution in and the service wrap, putting that into an OPEX model or balance with CAPEX as the client requires, but really leverages our agility to pivot with the customer demand. So once we're established with the client, they'll come to us and say, what do you think? We're looking at a project to do this. What can we do from your perspective and your experiences as a multi-vendor managed service provider? There's also a focus on allowing your team to focus on supporting the business with IT, not supporting the IT itself. And then one of the things that Josh is very keen on with his team is actually the integration with the client's IT team and business opposite numbers and stakeholders. So with that, hopefully, is a little bit more meat on the bones from what Trust can see. I'd like to hand over into Josh, who can show you what the Trust how is.
Excellent, thanks, Chris. And I'm glad that I passed the first test of being able to turn my mic on, and not the one everyone needs to shout at. Yeah, I'm going to run through on a few slides how Trust apply the managed service principles that Chris has just shared with you to our existing customer base. And I will start by flicking straight through to the first slide, please, Beth. Even if you're joining us today from an organisation with more traditional operating hours, the reality is that the IT service or services that you are responsible for are probably expected to be available 24/7. Operating 24/7, frankly, isn't easy, and it's certainly not something that we call cheap, particularly if you're trying to scale all of the specialisms that you need to operate a modern IT infrastructure. 24/7 desktop support, Wintel, network, security, DBAs, it's relentless. And on top of simply having the ability to provide all of those services 24/7, you need to do them well. Your users won't tolerate downtime, your CSO won't accept poor security posture, and your CFO won't allow runaway costs. So instead of burdening yourself with all of that pain and risk, you can you can transfer it or certain components of it out to a managed service provider like Trust. Essentially, we can take responsibility for managing all or any of your infrastructure assets or endpoint devices, and in that we can design, deploy, monitor, manage, and maintain those devices, either through an all-inclusive service or by simply taking out the elements that you don't have the resources, skilled, trained, capable resources, or perhaps even just inclination to deliver in-house. Next slide, please, Beth. Why Trust amongst many others out there? And to put it really simply, we already do this and we do it well. By using Trust or joining Trust, you don't need to follow the learning curve that's required to successfully onboard new technology into your organization. We can onboard and deploy almost immediately. We've already got that skill and that capability, and that ultimately saves you time and money. We're constantly out there scouring that IT landscape and revalidating our selection of best-in-breed technology vendors. Technology is accelerating at a rapid rate and will continue to do so. References to ChatGPT, AI, all that stuff coming about now is quite complex to keep up with. We already manage tens of thousands of devices across thousands of unique locations throughout the UK and Europe, and we monitor those devices using industry-leading monitoring and availability toolsets, which feed literally millions of data points into our 24/7 service desk. And that team is there to react, triage, resolve faults, but also proactively address capacity warnings and metrics before they become issues to you and your environment. Finally, when hardware is at fault, our own field service engineers can promptly attend those locations and repair or replacement equipment on site for you. You don't have to lift a finger or do a thing, so to speak. And as for doing it well, our team care immensely about our customer experience. It's something I'm personally quite passionate about, whether that's direct to your end users or a tech-to-tech interaction with your own in-house teams. The customer experience we deliver is essential to us. All of our managed service agreements are backed by customer-specific SLAs, which provides assurance but also protection for you to know that when things do go wrong, we're going to put them right and we're going to put them right quick. Thankfully, it doesn't happen too often. Our customer satisfaction score, as is indicated on this slide here for 2022, was what I hope is quite an impressive 99%. And better still, so far this year, we've topped out on 100% on 2 of the 5 months so far. If I could have the next slide, please. Talking about managed services and what Trust can bring you in principle is great. But if you're going to place your trust into a third-party service provider, it does bring new risks, which ultimately need to be weighed up against the ones that you're going to transfer out. I've got a couple of slides here, which I'm hoping will demonstrate that we have, we genuinely do have the capabilities to deliver some of the things that we've spoken about. First off, Aldi. Our engagement with Aldi stretched back to 2014. We were contracted initially to assist with quite a rapid deployment of servers across the store estate, far from a managed service and just a general project rollout. But our successful delivery there helped prosper our relationship. In 2015, we were engaged to design and deliver a guest wireless service, which was rolled out across our retail estate under a 3-year managed service agreement, which encompassed WAN connectivity, structured cabling, and hardware, and all the support, monitoring, and provisioning around the edges of that. The needs of Aldi, a rapidly expanding national retailer, helped us expand our technical service provision. We introduced our own field service team, which now operates 7 days a week, which allows us to ultimately retain control of the quality of deployments, but also support that we deliver across the estates that we manage. Our managed service agreement with Aldi was extended by 2 years before they expanded the scope of what was being delivered. They moved essentially from physically separated internal supplier and guest networks onto a converged LAN environment, and had a quite strong and frankly understandable desire for Meraki being the technology vendor of choice there. And Trust were awarded the contract to replace both legacy HP switching infrastructure and upgrade our own previous guest wireless hardware throughout the UK and Irish estate, which is still being delivered under, again, our same managed service provision. It's not just networks that we deliver for Aldi. Chris touched on a second ago, that the network ultimately is that backbone, but we have end device services that we can enhance your digital estate with. In 2020, we launched a signage service with Aldi. It started with just 1,000. It started with 1,000 screens being procured and deployed over quite an intense 3-month period, just as COVID became a thing. That estate is now exceeding 3,000 displays just in the UK and Ireland, and is soon to be several thousand more across Europe, all of which are entrusted into the care of my service teams to provide support and management, not just of the physical display hardware, but also content management, deployment, playback reporting via Samsung's Magic Info platform. I'll leave Aldi now, move on to next slide. Thanks, Beth. Move on to Arc, which follows a similar story in many respects, although a slightly different vertical. Our engagement started with quite a small, compact consultancy arrangement. Arc were going and continue to go through quite rapid growth, and we've kept pace with that. It didn't take long from that consultancy before we were asked to adopt the network support and management of their existing estate, whilst building a program to replace legacy infrastructure with a new and standardized next generation Cisco model, which includes firepower appliances, DNA switching, Duo, and ICE. In a modern world, the underlying network is really the backbone of the operation. It's needed to manage their energy, cooling, cameras, physical access, security, corporate services. Everything within that data center environment relies on the network services that we provide to them. To guarantee the service of the 24-hour needs of that client and others, our Sarah & Sister head office here, where we're all sat right now, is staffed 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, monitoring and managing that critical network infrastructure so they don't have to. This year for Arc, we've started to transition them away from traditional sort of period-based support and maintenance packages using things like SmartNet, for example, and enrolled their entire Cisco estate into Cisco's enterprise agreement. In doing that, we're enabling Arc to realise several £1 million worth of savings over the next 5 years, which is impressive by itself, but even more so when you consider that that's after factoring in the increased costs of managed service provisions that will be required to match their quite ambitious international growth plans over that same period. If I can move on to the final slide, please, Beth. I've spoken a little bit there about the value we can bring to enterprise and quite large scale clients, but recognise that not everyone will have thousands of devices to manage or multi-million-pound budgets. And really, whether you've got 10 devices or 10,000 devices, you still need that expertise to look after them. And of course, higher volume there helps drive value. Supporting 10 devices hopefully won't need the full-time attention of one person. But if it did, you'd hope that every 10 or even one that you add on after that doesn't require another person, and so on. As a trust managed service customer, you'll benefit from the aggregated volume that we've already had through, namely, some of those clients that I've previously discussed. We've onboarded clients into our managed service provisions with just a handful of devices, and those devices are just as critical to our clients as they are to us. Really, regardless of scale, you can benefit from all of these things that we've discussed: the same tailored approach, the same exceptional service, the same access to the very skilled and knowledgeable teams at a much, hopefully, lower cost than you can recognise through other means and methods. That's a whistle-stop tour of trust and a couple of our managed service provisions at the moment. I'll pass back to Chris.
Thanks, Josh. So yeah, we've tried to keep that succinct and focused without too much waffle to get to the nub of where we are with our managed services, and as well as being a Cisco Premier provider that we've been audited and held accountable for by Cisco, hopefully while they're showing their support today, actually, give you some stimulation for thought around your existing scenario. But also give a flavour of what we do for a couple of our managed service clients. So we hope that that's been useful to you this morning. And if there's anything we can do, we're happy to set up a one-to-one for a discovery workshop around some or all of these points in terms of what your particular scenario is around them, whether that's, you know, skills, costs, the resilience aspects, or agility in terms of your digital transformation challenges as it stands. So we'd be welcome to take any offers of that.